This is one street corner in New York City, one camera angle, and what you're about to watch is 100 years of history happening in the exact same spot. The same fire hydrant, the same building line, the same sidewalk crack, while an entire century changes around it. No cuts to a different location, no fancy camera moves, just one fixed frame, watching one piece of sidewalk live through everything New York has thrown at it. Booms, busts, blackouts, wars, and a pandemic, without ever once looking away. It starts here. I'm going to take you through every decade, the wars, the crashes, the booms, the crime waves, and the corner that survived all of it. Stick around, because the ending of this street's story is not what you'd expect. New York in the 1920s is still figuring out what a car even is. Horses are still legally allowed on this street. There's no traffic light on this corner yet, just a police officer standing in the middle of the intersection, directing everything by hand, blowing a whistle every few minutes to keep the chaos from turning into an actual accident. In fact, New York didn't fully phase out horse-drawn traffic until the early 1930s. Cars and horses shared these same streets for over a decade. Delivery wagons, ice carts, and early automobiles all competed for the same narrow lane, and nobody had agreed yet on who had the right of way. You can still see hitching posts bolted into the curb, left over from a version of this street that hadn't quite caught up to the 20th century yet. The buildings on this corner are barely a generation old themselves. Brick tenements, hand-painted signages above every shop, laundry lines strung between fire escapes. This is a city still being built in real time, and this corner is one small piece of a much bigger construction boom sweeping across Manhattan. Then 1929 hits. The stock market collapses 6 blocks from this corner. You can see it in the body language of the people walking past. Slower, heads down, fewer new storefronts opening. Within a year, half the shop fronts on this block change hands. Tailor closes, a bank branch shutters its windows. A bakery that had been open for 15 years quietly changes ownership 3 times in 18 months. Corner doesn't disappear, it just gets quieter. The way an entire city gets quieter when nobody has money to spend on anything but rent and bread. We don't know this man's name. We don't know if he kept his job that year, but he walked past this exact spot, the same spot your screen is looking at right now, on a day that probably felt completely ordinary to him and completely unremarkable, in a decade that history would later call one of the worst in American memory. When the U.S. enters the war, this street changes overnight. Gas rationing signs go up in the windows. Ration books become as common a sight in shop windows as price tags. The men you saw walking this corner in 1938, many of them are gone by 1943, shipped overseas, their names printed on a small honor roll that gets nailed to a nearby lamppost. The women who take their place are running the shops, driving the delivery trucks, and keeping this corner alive, while half the neighborhood is fighting a war on the other side of the planet. For the first time in this street's history, the people keeping it running are not the people who owned it a decade earlier. And then, almost as fast as it changes back. Except this time, something new appears on the corner that was never there before. Neon. This is the first time in the street's history that it doesn't go fully dark at night. A diner sign buzzes to life on the corner, a movie marquee a few doors down starts lighting up the sidewalk in colors nobody on this block had ever seen after sunset. And once the lights come on, they never really turn off again, which is exactly what makes the next 20 years so different. The 1950s are the boom everyone remembers. New cars every year, new appliances in every shop window, a street that looks like it's never had a bad day in its life. Television antennas start appearing on every rooftop within just a few years of each other, like the whole block agreed on the same upgrade at once. Kids ride bikes down a sidewalk that 30 years earlier still had horse carts parked on it. But by the late 60s, the shine starts to crack. Look at the walls. Look at the signage. This is the beginning of 2 decades that New York would rather forget. Protest flyers start appearing on lampposts. Storefronts that used to turn over every few years start sitting empty for months at a time. A shop that sold radios in 1955 is boarded up by 1969, and nobody bothers to rent the space for almost 2 years. You can feel the momentum of the street shifting before you can point to exactly why. Quick pause, Because what happens to this corner in the next 15 years is the reason I made this video in the first place. If you've ever heard someone say New York used to be dangerous, the next chapter is exactly what they mean. But stick with me, because the way this street claws its way back is the best part of the whole story. 1977. New York City has a blackout, and looting breaks out across the city. This corner isn't spared. You can see boarded-up windows appear almost overnight, plywood nailed up faster than anyone could get insurance paperwork filed. Some of those boards stay up for years, not because anyone's rebuilding, because for a while, nobody's sure it's worth it. A city that once felt unstoppable is now a city that a lot of people are actively trying to leave. By the mid-'80s, this is one of the most heavily graffitied blocks in the whole neighborhood. Crime is up, property values are down. If you told someone standing on this corner in 1985 that in 20 years this same spot would have a $9 coffee shop on it, they'd have laughed you off the block. To them, this corner wasn't an investment. It was just where you tried not to get your car broken into. In the 90s, the city starts an aggressive cleanup. Graffiti gets painted over, storefronts get renovated, and money, real money, starts flowing back into this neighborhood. Slowly at first, and then all at once. Rents start climbing for the first time in decades. The businesses that survived the rough years suddenly find themselves sitting on some of the most valuable real estate in the city, whether they meant to or not. A landlord who could barely find a tenant in 1988 is fielding multiple offers on the same storefront by 1998. In September 2001, the skyline behind this corner changes forever. It's a moment the whole city, and this street, carries forward quietly for the next 2 decades. For a few weeks afterward, this corner is quieter than it's been since the war years. Flags in windows, flowers taped to lampposts, a stillness that doesn't need explaining to anyone who lived through it. Then, in 2008, boom turns to bust again. 4 lease signs go up in windows that had waited years for a tenant. A bank branch that opened in 2005 with a ribbon-cutting ceremony closes its doors less than 4 years later. It's the same story the corner has told a dozen times by now. Bad follows good, good follows bad. Except each cycle seems to move a little faster than the last. What used to take 20 years to swing from boom to bust now takes less than 10. By the 2010s, everyone on this corner is looking at a screen instead of at each other. It's the first time in 90 years that people are physically present on this street, mentally somewhere else entirely. Delivery cyclists start weaving through pedestrian traffic. A bike lane gets painted onto a street that spent its first 8 decades built entirely around cars. Then 2020 hits. For a few months, this corner is the emptiest it's been since the Great Depression. No cars, no pedestrians, just an eerie, silent street that had never once in a century gone fully quiet. Storefronts that survived blackouts, recessions, and today, the same corner. E-bikes instead of horses, a coffee shop instead of a soup line, a glass building instead of the tenement that stood here in 1925. The fire hydrant is different. The sidewalk has been repoured at least 4 times. But the corner, the actual intersection, the actual angle this camera is looking at, hasn't moved an inch in 100 years. Here's the thing about this corner that took me completely by surprise researching this video. 100 years, 6 generations of New Yorkers, 1 camera angle that never moved. That's the story this corner would tell you, if a sidewalk could talk. Tell me in the comments which decade you'd want to step into. I read every single one, and I'm picking the top comment for the next street I recreate. If you want to see the next 100 years of a different New York corner, subscribe, because that video's already in progress.